Hey there, Knicks fans. How you doing? It's your boy Jonathan Macri with you for another episode of the Knicks Film School Podcast. We are in surely for a kooky one today, and there is a reason for that. And the reason for that is the gentleman that I am looking at in my screen. One is to my left, and one is to my right. I don't know that we would call this a crossover episode, but we are getting some fellow content creators from Knicks Universe here to join us as we inch closer towards the start of training camp. It is the hard Knicks Life boys. Barry, hello, sir.
Hey, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Terrific.
That's good.
It's good to be back here.
What's that?
It's good to be back here and talking into a mic after, not potting for a couple of months. We took the whole summer off.
Well, we're going to get to that. But before we do, your co-host, I'm going to introduce him as, I don't know if that's the appropriate terminology. Blandy, hello, sir. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Happy to be here.
I think this is your maiden voyage onto the Knicks Film School airwaves, is it not?
No, once before.
I was going to say he was here last year.
Yeah.
My memory is...
Don't worry, Jonathan. Blanderson is very
I made kind of a fool
forget.
of myself, the first time anyway, so it's okay. It's best if you don't remember that.
Yeah, but I don't... Well, you guys are both around my age. Are your memories fading as much as I... Because it's going downhill fast. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, no, my short-term memory is awful as well as my long-term.
Not mine. Barry will tell you that I'm as sharp as a tack.
And I'm like a fish.
I'm with you, Barry. So we're doing a little gimmick today, which we're going to get to the gimmick in a bit. We should have some fun with it. But before we do, and it'll actually get us into why we're doing the gimmick. This is a little bit of a momentous occasion because the reason you guys are on, and we would have probably had you on anyway, but about a month ago, I think it was, maybe not a month ago, like several weeks ago, the Hard Knicks Life podcast account on the old Twitter app tweeted out that this is all she wrote. Here's looking at you, kid. I'm going off on the plane wherever it is that I go, and I immediately texted you, Barry, and I'm like, say it isn't so. And this led to some back and forth, but I'm just going to turn it over to you, Barry. So why don't you? Is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners now?
Yeah, I mean, look, Craig, who's always been like kind of the leader of the three of us, he started the pod on his own 8 years ago. He did the first season himself, and then he brought me on for a couple of seasons. Then we added Blandy. And for the last couple of years, I don't know if it wasn't fun for him anymore. I mean, I'll get it to in a second, but in more detail why he kind of exited. But he toyed with the idea of canceling it last year. And we did like our first episode last year, and it was almost like he was on the fence to do it. And then again, the listeners kind of brought us back. We have a lot of loyal listeners to the pod. It's not like the KFS empire, all right? But we do. The listeners that we do have are very, very loyal to us. So they kind of sucked us back in. Yes. And after Craig kind of announced that he was done, again, the Twitter comments were really heartwarming. They were really nice. A lot of genuine, loyal listeners that said they were going to miss us and that. So Jay, Blandy's also known as Jay. That's his off-air name is Jay.
My real name.
His God-given name.
We still have fun doing it. We wanted to continue doing it. We have Craig's blessing to continue to do it. So we are here in part to announce that Hard Knicks Life will continue. But, in the absence of Craig, although he may pop on from time to time, but Jay and I will be running the ship from here on out.
It's very exciting. I frankly could not imagine a world in which Hard Knicks Life podcast did not exist. One, because there's nothing else like it. I don't think there's anything. I mean, maybe there's some other NBA fan base that has a pod that exists in the same kind of realm that you guys do. I don't think so, because it gets.
We don't take ourselves too seriously. No. We like to have fun.
You do.
We like to put on a well-produced show, which we'll continue to do. Yeah. And we're hardcore Knicks fans, like anybody else.
Yeah, no, but it's like there's a lot of people who don't take themselves maybe too seriously and produce shit. What you guys produce is very, very enjoyable. Blandy, this is like oh man, I should have thought of an NBA analogy that would be apt. Trying to think. So when Jordan retired in '93, so Pippen elevated the
I guess
number one.
Kukoc, maybe Tony Kukoc. And
was BJ Armstrong still? He was on that 93, 94 team too, right? I think.
I think so.
Interesting chimed in. Yeah, but either do you feel more comfortable being Kukoc? That's fine. Kukoc is a great player.
Whatever. I'm moving from the number 3 spot into the number 2 slot. Probably be some bumps along the way. I'm used to basically just running the soundboard and making some off-color jokes every now and again. But gonna have to step up my game, I guess.
And John, Craig knew we were coming on here, and
yes,
he did prepare a statement. I have not read.
Is it handwritten or is it typed out?
It's typed out. He texted it to us and definitely wanted us to get this statement out there. For whatever reason, he didn't want to do it himself, but he did give me the responsibility of sharing it. If I may,
he was clear. We were not to deviate from the statement at all. So
right,
Barry's got to read it word for word.
The statement is the statement. I have a box of tissues handy. Feel free to go whenever you're ready.
After 7 years, or 8, it's debatable, of doing the It's a Hard Knicks Life podcast, and after conferring with close friends and family, it is with great sadness that I, Craig, will no longer be hosting the greatest fucking Knicks podcast in the history of mankind. Maybe not by numbers or by popularity, but by sheer talent, entertainment, and hilarity. Driven by a strong desire to stay true to themselves, 3 best friends from Long Island and the revolutionary Hard Knicks Life podcast bravely paved the way for all other Knicks content creators. And I, Craig, is and will always be the driving force. To all the loyal listeners, times heal all wounds. I, Craig, will forever remember each and every one of you. Ralph, Brandon, Murder Jim, Macho Man, that dentist from Ronkonkoma who still owes me a checkup with unlimited sweet air, and so many others, too numerous to count. Together, we created the mold, and then we broke it. The Knicks podcasting world will never be the same. Until next time, it is a hard Knicks life.
I actually heard that in Craig's voice. I know you read it, but it was impossible not to hear that in Craig's voice. Craig's great because he's very funny, and he has a sense of humor that I'm not sure I've ever seen anybody else quite approximate. But like it is pretty sad that he's going to be gone. But it also is an opportunity for growth. So I'm excited to see what you guys do with the pod, and I will get a little flavor of Hard Knicks Life tonight with what we're doing. So how do I introduce this? So basically, when we weren't sure whether or not the show was going to be going away and you guys are going to be all retiring, not just Craig, we were trying to come up with ideas to like commemorate the 8 years that you were on. 7 for you, but 8 for the Hard Knicks Life podcast. And the idea that we came up with, which we decided to stick with, even though the pod is continuing in the spirit of it is a Hard Knicks Life, is to come up with the what phrase did you use, Barry? You phrased that with just like just the worst. It's like the lowest.
I said like the lowest points or moments, or maybe the moments that you felt at your absolute lowest as a Knicks fan over those 8 years.
Yeah. And it's so the start of the relevant period from which we could pick moments from is I guess you could go back as far as the summer of 2016, right? The summer before the 2016-17 season. Right.
That's kind of what I looked at. Yeah, it was from the 16-17 season to today.
I think that's fair. So I'm going to get to why I think this is such a perfect thing, and I have a little send off for Craig in one of my picks here. But I would not be able to do this pod if the Knicks were not good, like really, really good right now. Like I think time, they say, heals all wounds. like Blandy, I don't know how you feel. Like it is only because they are now viewed as like one of the 3 or 4 most competent franchises in the league that we could sit here and poke fun at all of the shit that has gone
stuff
wrong
that we've had to bear, all the stuff we've had to live through over the last 20 some odd years.
It's a different energy, not just around the team, but like when you're doing the show, when you're doing these episodes, it's a totally different energy that you've got. It's a totally different way you're looking at the team. The shit that you were analyzing, which really meant nothing unless you were deep into the Knicks, now actually means something across the landscape of the NBA.
Oh, it means a lot. And like, I guess what I'm going to be curious about, and then we'll get into our lists. We're each going to draft 2, I think, by the way, and then say some honorable mentions because I God knows I have a few that I like to talk about. It's going to be interesting for me to see this next phase of Knicks fandom develop amongst the fan base because like they're good now, and like there's a different kind of pain that comes when bad things happen when you're really, really good, and that like this, it's not like the bottom is going to fall out. Like you're going to like the Knicks are going to be good for a while. Like we know that, we're pretty sure that. I should knock on wood, but we know we could be pretty confident the Knicks are going to be good for a while, and yet there's an argument that like the greatest pain is still coming because like when you have your hopes set on a championship, you don't win it, and you whatever it is, lose a tough game 7 or whatever the case may be. Like, and I don't know how you guys feel. I don't think this past year qualifies. Like, obviously I was disappointed they couldn't get past Indiana, but like they had nobody. So it was like, fine.
Well, and even John, that's the whole thing. That was a whole interesting thing with this exercise because you would think, when the stakes are really high,
yes,
and you don't come through, that's what's going to hurt. But yet the last 3 years, of this team, it's still like in the honeymoon phase of this team kind of turning the corner. Obviously we expect big things. We expect the big things last year, but it came with, a lot of injury prone stuff at the end of the season that you kind of expected what was going to happen. You can't put the fault on them. And now we look to this next season, but those first, couple of years back into the playoffs after that long drought, it's like, you're kind of just happy to be there at that point. So when you do not win, it's disappointing, but like, but you take it with a grain of salt and you kind of look at the bright sky of it all.
Yeah, no,
I'm interested to see how the fan base reacts because there are so many people who just don't remember us being good. I mean, there are so many kids or people in their 20s that they don't remember a time when we were good, like at least like we remember the 90s or at least, and so we can think back to it when they actually were a good basketball team. A lot of these people have never experienced that at all.
If you're 30, then right now, then you were 5 when they went to the finals in 99, and you were maybe not born when they went to the finals in 94. And like Andrew, I'm sure is seething behind the scenes because he always hates when I do this. I kind of like gently gloss over the 2012-13 team. Like, no, that was legit. That was a real thing. But it was like, it was gone almost as soon as it got there, so that's why I don't consider that an era of Knicks basketball in the sense that like the 90s were an era, and we hope that this is an era. You know what I mean?
Well, that, and I mean, the fact that they've gotten into the playoffs 3 out of the last 4 years, and obviously, where they are, the stable franchise that they've become, and we can see that this, barring some catastrophic thing to happen, they should be cemented there as well over the next few years. So the people at 30 years old have never seen this.
So, last thing I'll say before we start, what was at first I was like, this is going to be tough because I'm going to say something about maybe an event or a happening or a non-happening, and I'm going to say that it was very hard and it was one of my 2 main low points, and people are going to be like, well, that's stupid because if it wasn't for that, we would not be here today. And like, yes, but I think you could say that about almost any bad thing. Like if they like almost literally anything bad that happened in the last 8 years, you can draw a through line to like, well, if that bad thing didn't happen, then maybe like Steve Mills would still have a job and like, like they would have never gotten Jalen Brunson, like all of these things. So for me, I just kind of went back to how it made me feel in the moment. And in the subsequent, let's say, days, weeks, maybe months, I wasn't like, well, that, if that thing had happened, then we wouldn't have Brunson. Like that to me is. Did you guys encounter any of the same issues when making?
I know that for me, some of the things that I have on my list are things that in the moment was like a really low point, but in hindsight, you look back and you go, "Gee, thank fucking God."
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Thank God.
Okay. How should we? What order? Andrew, I need you to chime in. What order should we go in here? Because I'm incapable of deciding that.
I believe this calls for our highly convoluted system known as high card draw, gentlemen. So I've got myself a deck of cards here, courtesy of my trip to Summer League. I'm going to do a quick shuffle. I'm going to
make sure they're all facing the same way.
So I actually did that during Patreon when the cards went everywhere, which they just did again. Here's the thing they don't tell you about Vegas cards is they're slick as fuck. So anytime I go to shuffle,
they look like they're made of metal. Like
they feel like they're made of metal, but like a slippery metal. So there.
Maybe that's not the best.
It's like they're like made of tinsel. Anyway, they're all facing the same way. I will start with John. Well, okay. Who's the oldest? No, we're not going to answer that. We'll start with John. Won't do that to you guys on the pod. No, it's okay. John, your card is a 8 of clubs. Okay. Barry, your card is a 8 of hearts. Okay, we'll decide the tiebreaker later. If Blandy gets an 8 of diamonds, I swear.
Oh, come on.
9. Okay.
Yes.
Blandy, you get to go first.
Okay.
John, your second card is a 6.
Okay.
And then Barry, your second card is a 9. So
we got
technically Barry's second, and then John's third.
And we're not going snake?
No, because you're only listing 2 things each, right?
Exactly. Okay.
So we'll just go, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Got it. Okay. Blandy,
this isn't like a fun draft where I want to own my sadness and own that moment,
Well, look, I'll say this: if there's, well, I'm not going to say anything. If something gets picked before I get a chance to pick it, I'll say my piece, even though if it's not mine. So, Blandy, what do you got for us?
So I'm going with June 30th of 2019. Okay, it's the lead up to free agency. I remember I was at my sister-in-law's in the city, just waiting for the news that Durant and Kyrie were coming to the Garden, only to find out on Twitter that the two of them were going to Brooklyn. And in that moment, I was about as low as you could possibly be. Very dejected, very disappointed, very upset. No positive in sight. But here it is 5 years later. And like I said, thank fucking God that didn't happen. But in that moment, that was tough because you really did have the feeling that they were coming here. When it was LeBron years before, I never really thought that was happening. But this was something I really thought was going to happen. I really believed it. And to find out so quickly and then to have them go to the Nets and not, somewhere else was crushing. So I'm going to go with that.
I think it would have been my top pick. It was exactly what I was referring to before, when a lot of people will hear you say that and hear me say this and be like, that's ridiculous. It was the best thing that ever happened to the franchise.
Yeah.
You should have picked yourself up, dusted yourself off immediately and said, thank God we didn't get that guy who's not going to play basketball for the next year. And the crazy sidekick next to him. And yet all the logic in the world didn't fucking matter on that day.
No.
Barry, remember where you were for that one?
Yeah, I was at my cousin's, I think it was a graduation party in the backyard. Had my phone in my lap. I knew the news was going to be announced at any moment. And then there it came. And then shortly after that, we got the news of Julius Randle, which, look, nobody was expecting that to heal all wounds, and he wasn't like a max guy and, wasn't going to fill the shoes of KD. But after dreaming all summer of having a guy like Kevin Durant on your team, I didn't want any part of Kyrie. We all knew he was crazy and a cancer at that point. Yeah. But look, if that was, was going to come along with it to make it happen, of course I wanted that. And we go on and sign Julius Randle, which was a fine player, at the time, 19 million, fair deal, wasn't crazy, and I mean,
team option on the third year.
Right.
I remember I was so excited about that team option. I was like, that was the happiest moment of the day.
Yeah, but they went on this. I mean, they made a lot of signings that summer. They signed him. They signed Marcus Morris. They signed Bobby Portis, Elfrid Payton, Wayne Ellington, Reggie Bullock, Taj Gibson. I mean, it was a list of players, which, I mean, it wasn't Kevin Durant.
What possessed me to do this, I will never really know. But I went to take a trip. My wife's sister and my brother-in-law were away for the weekend, and they needed us to go feed their cats. And my wife's like, I gotta go feed the cat, and I want to stop at Target before that. Do you want to come? And it was like 4 p.m. And I'm like, or 4:30, whatever it was. And I was like, yeah, I can't sit here anymore. I gotta get out of the fucking house. And so I don't know if you remember, Mark Stein tweeted out the bit about the Nets front office is like feeling like they're like there's a vibe of confidence, whatever the hell it was, coming out of the Nets offices right now. So that I was on the Bethpage Parkway when that tweet hit, and then I was in the Target parking lot when the Woj tweet hit. So that was fun. Yeah. It sucked. It was not a fun day.
Then you walked into Target and you bought out all their bonbons, and you went home and you just shoved your face and cried.
I wish I remember what the hell I bought. All right, enough about June 30th, 2019. Barry, you are up with the second pick.
All right, my number one will be when Marcus Morris bounced the ball off of Justin Anderson's head in that preseason game. No, that's not my number one. But I figured
you're just crazy enough to have some wild something. Anyway,
no. Okay. I'm going to go to a date I'm sure you all remember, February 6th, 2018, the KP injury. I mean, look, take yourself back there. His third season. I mean, the guy just kept getting better and better each season at that point. He was just named to his first All-Star game like a week or two before that. His only All-Star game, looking back, he hasn't gotten back there. No. And at that point, he was averaging 22.7 points a game, 2.4 blocks. He was shooting 39% from deep. We had, at the time, what we thought was our franchise player. He hadn't hit his ceiling yet. And I'll never forget that image of just him, laying on the baseline, slapping the floor, and you knew his season was done. And you didn't know where his career was going to be in the future. And it's like, well, who are the Knicks then? If they're not KP as the head of the snake, who is this team, and what do we do now, and where are we going?
Yep. This is why I was hoping this would fall to me. You guys took my top 2 picks, so thank you for that. The first time I ever listened to Hard Knicks Life was that injury, and it was, I think I've said some version of this before, but it kind of, 2 things inspired me to start a podcast. One, it was like, there's no podcast out there that really did it the way I think I would want to do it. And 2, you guys, that episode where it was like so real and like, just, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. And I was like so down in the dumps, and I just wanted somebody to be down in the dumps with me. And that was as down in the dumps as it could get. Yeah.
Well, the news came down while they were recording, right? I mean, it was Barry and Craig at that point.
Yes.
And Craig went
final word.
Craig went ballistic. I tried finding it today, Barry, but it doesn't go that far back because it wasn't on the same network. But just to listen to the pain in Craig's voice, he was like
emotional.
He was on the verge of tears.
It was pure pain. I remember it was it was as he found out. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was the most genuine thing I'd ever heard anybody do. But again, this is one where it's like a lot of Knicks fans are like maybe not the good riddance anymore, because I think people are kind of past the KP hate, but like, he's moved on, we've moved on. But yeah, man, I was at a Nets game. They were playing the Rockets. A work colleague of mine was like, I got tickets. You want to go see James Harden tonight? I was like, yeah, sure. I'll go see James Harden score 50. The Knicks had been like losing. So I was like, I'll like watch the game on repeat or whatever. Yeah. So I got the tweet. That's how I found out. Not ideal. Okay. You guys screwed me. You really screwed me. So I thought those were the clear top two picks. I could go in several different directions here. And I have a feeling a couple of different ways I could go might get back to me. I'm gonna go with my gut though on this one, and it may seem odd, but I'm gonna go with it anyway. And it is the summer of 2017. I apologize, I don't have an exact date, but it is when I heard that Kristaps Porzingis skipped his exit interview. And the reason, actually, Barry, Matt, what you said a few moments ago explains why it was, because after what had been really, I mean, ever since the beginning of the 2013-14 season, really, right? 13-14, 14-15, 15-16, 16, like it had been all bad. And then we got this guy who was ours, and like we still knew the organization was kind of dysfunctional. We still knew they needed to get out from Phil Jackson was like clearly not the right decision maker for leading the franchise forward. Like that was a poor hire, whatever. They still had the Melo thing hanging over their head. Like, are they going to trade him? Where can they trade him? Like waiving his no trade clause, all that stuff. But we had this guy who was like the best thing that had happened to the franchise since Ewing. And I know back then, for me at least, because the vibes had been so shitty for most of the, at that point, previous like 15 years, the thing that hurt me the most was not like losses or even injuries, arguably, but it was just the notion that like this was a cancerous organization and nothing they ever did and nobody they ever drafted was going to excise that cancer. And that's why when that news came down that this guy who was supposed to be not the second coming of Ewing, but like the best thing that happened to the franchise since Ewing, arguably, was like, I'm already fucking sick of you guys. I've been here, whatever it was, 2 years. I'm done. Forget this. I was like, you gotta be shitting me. And that to me was like such a punch in the gut. And yeah, so that's my pick.
Yeah, that's shit like that happens, and then your brain just starts wandering. Like, what's going on? Yeah. You start asking yourself questions like, why? And the answers that you're not going to get, answered. No. Questions that you're not going to get answers to.
Well, here's the thing. We kind of had answers because the beat reporters were doing their job at the time, and like I know I gave Steph Bondy shit for it in the moment, and only later to find out like, hey, he was just reporting what he knew, and everything he knew was like dead on balls accurate. It was not a good organization. It was not a healthy organization. It was the type of organization where if you're a guy like KP at that time who cares about his career and there's tomfoolery going on all around you, you're going to be like, what the like, I got to do something, and maybe he has regrets about some of that stuff. But yeah, so that'll be my third.
Right.
Blandy, is back to you.
So it's back to me.
It's back
all right.
to
So
you.
I'm going to stick with the same kind of theme.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with something where in the moment it was tough. And I think in hindsight, again, not a bad thing. Going back to May 14th, 2019, draft lottery.
2019. Wow. I was wondering if someone was going to go here. Okay.
I'm curious next on my list too.
I'm curious to hear you out on this. Talk to me, Blandy. Why is this your next pick?
Because the idea of Zion was so tantalizing. He could be that transcendent player that we needed. And then to not only lose out on him, but then to drop all the way to third when we were just so bad. And we all thought we were getting Zion. We all thought that.
Did you think that though?
Well, listen, as a Knicks fan, have I come to expect the worst? Yeah. But did I still, I hoped in my bones.
The new rules were in place for that lottery. the new rules were in place for that lottery, the system, the way that they were doing it, you weren't guaranteed anything. So even though that they finished dead last and had 17 wins that season, it didn't guarantee anything. But yeah, you had the highest percentage. So yeah, I hope too.
And now you look back and it's like Zion can barely get on the stay on the floor. Then you figure Morant, who, when he's not shooting off, when he's not beating up little boys at his house playing basketball.
Little boys.
He's, he was like 16, 17, that kid. He's waving guns around. Listen, RJ's not with us anymore, but RJ helped build the foundation.
He's still alive and well, just to be clear.
Yeah. He's not with us anymore. Yes. He's not going to Canada. He's in Toronto. He's in another country. He's in another country. So, but he helped us move in the right direction. We pick up OG as a result.
Yes.
And so, all these years later, now listen, things could have been completely different. Maybe Zion comes here, we get the first pick and things are completely different. But
something tells me that.
But honestly, things probably would have been worse if he had come to the Knicks. It's how snake bitten we are.
It's so funny. I do occasionally during the summertime for the newsletter, like what ifs. I've never done the what if they had gotten the first pick, and maybe I'll. Yeah, I've never even thought about it very, very much. Barry, were you at the lottery party that night with me?
Yeah, at the bar in the city when ESPN was covering the story. Yeah. Well, the ESPN sent a camera crew. That's how big this moment was.
Someone picked it up that we were having that, and it went. I don't know who it reached, but yeah, there was a camera crew there. There was a whole thing. I gotta tell you though, Blandy, didn't even come remotely close to making my list, and here's why. I just said before, sometimes you can't out logic your, what's going on inside. For that one, I was able to, and it was purely maybe it's because I've taught math for a lot of years, but I knew the numbers going in, and I knew a top 3 pick getting in the top 3 was a win based on the math. It was a win. It was, I think the exact numbers basically you had a 2/3 chance to fall out of the top 3, right? To be 4th or worse, and then when you factored in that, yes, there was obviously there was a generational player at the top. Yes, Morant was an excellent consolation prize. But I even looked at that draft before we fell to 3rd. I looked at it as there was a top 3. And then after, because it was clear that at least RJ was going to be 3rd, right? Now we could go back and debate whether he should have been 3rd pick or all that stuff. But after that, it was oh my, it ended up being DeAndre Hunter, who's now a contract that the Hawks don't even want. So between that, and the math and the fact, and it was, what the other thing was? The fact that we had that moment of celebration where we made it to the last commercial break and they didn't fall to 5. For me, getting to be in that top 4, I was all right, we're in the top 4, only 1 to go. And then I was and then I literally said to myself, just please don't let it be 4. I don't care what happens. Just please don't let it be 4. It wasn't 4. And I'm fine, whatever happens, happens. And then it was.
Yeah. And again, here's ultimately a thing that we dodged 2 bullets, I'd so much rather be here where we are
and
now.
And with John Morant, those are literal bullets, Barry.
There you go.
Literal bullets.
But those bullets did not kill RJ Barrett, who's still alive.
Yes, he is alive.
It's very clear.
He's
let's not forget.
No longer with us.
And concerned.
Here in New York.
Barry, you are up.
All right. I'm pretty sure I'm going to be the only one that had this one on the list, I think. So this is something that actually was a feeling that lasted a couple of months, but it culminated on January 6th, 2022, which was the Randall thumbs down.
I have it on my list.
Okay.
I have it as an honorable mention. It wasn't among the ones I was really thinking of picking. I have it as an honorable mention.
Yeah. So they were playing Boston that game, and this is coming off a season almost like no other. I mean, it was one of the best seasons in Knicks history that this guy was coming off of, where, he's 2nd team All NBA. He won Most Improved Player, 8th in the MVP voting, just a monster. And, this guy was on the ground, when he first got here. He got elevated up after that monstrous season. He comes back and he regresses. And the fans just, all those feelings that they had from 2 seasons before that come back. They start booing him. This was before Smiley Julius. All right. He didn't start that whole meditation thing until the next season. So this was before, he was all light on his feet and everything.
Yeah.
And, it just got to a point and, he gives the thumbs down. It's like, oh no, what's going to happen now? Like, because you've seen this happen before, and then it gets really contentious between the fans and the player. I mean, he had to issue an apology on Instagram. It was embarrassing, the whole thing.
That's not what you want.
Now, I have a question for you, though. And this is why this is such a crazy one to pick. Do you remember the outcome of that particular game? Which game that thumbs down was?
It was the RJ shot.
Yeah, the RJ shot was the same fucking game, which was one of my happiest moments as a Knicks fan. So the fact that within a 48-minute game, I could have really a sad, dark, just depressing moment, and then have just a moment like that we had from RJ, hitting that 3-pointer to end the game, which was still one of my favorite moments as a Knicks fan. It's kind of crazy.
It's funny because the RJ moment, the RJ shot for me, I don't know if bittersweet is the right word, but I knew the Randall thing was I was obviously happy about the win, and it was a great moment for RJ. It was really cool to see. But I knew the Randall thing was the biggest issue facing the organization at the moment. So I couldn't shake that and truly enjoy the win like I knew I wanted to. And the other part, and I was wondering if this was going to come up, that was coming off of a week earlier, Julius getting COVID and missing 2 games, and there being that kind of ugly, not in all corners, but in some corners of the internet, fan response where people were kind of celebrating the fact that he had gotten COVID back when COVID was, we viewed it a little bit differently than we do it now. And that just whole thing, it was just an ugly moment, which is why I think to get combined together, I think it's a justifiable pick for sure. Blandy, were you affected by thumbs down gate? Did you do a thumbs down yourself?
No, I mean, listen, it was a bad look. That's for sure.
It was not a great look,
but
not okay. Okay. I have 4 here that I'm picking from. Ooh. I think I've narrowed it down to 2, and I have the last pick, right? So I could say which 2 I'm boiling it down to. Choice number 1. Again, I didn't look up the exact date, but 4-18. A 4-18 start to the 2019-20 season, where, and this relates to your first pick, Blandy, because after not getting Durant, we all kind of picked ourselves up, dusted ourselves off, and I remember I wrote what was probably the first thing that I had written that I don't know if I could say it went viral, but a lot of people read it, and some notable NBA people I remember tweeted about it and was this is a good piece of writing. I don't know if I agree with it, but it's good. About and what the gist of the piece was did the Knicks really have a bad summer? And I kind of went through it, and I'm this is okay, this is fine. They were the most incompetent NBA team in the league last year. They got a bunch of veterans. They did as well as they could have done considering the circumstances. They're a competent NBA team. And then they start out. It wasn't just that they started out 4-18, but it was just the utter laughingstock that they were. And then by the end of it, obviously it was Fizdale clapping it up and smiling as the Bucks are beating them by 80 million points or whatever it was. So that's although the Fizdale firing itself was kind of merciful. So that's one option. And the other option I have might seem a little, because it came in the midst of this very wonderful last 4-year stretch, but a little while after the thumbs down incident, the blown 27-point lead to the Brooklyn Nets last game before the All-Star break, part of a 3-17 stretch, which felt like it had completely wiped away all of the good vibes from the previous season. So those are the 2 that I'm picking between. And I think, honestly, I got to go with the Nets game as kind of a representation of that stretch of 20 games where they won 3. And personally for me, it was definitely my darkest moment, doing this shit where I was getting on here after games and just arguing with people about Tom Thibodeau and was this all his fault? Was he a terrible coach? And everybody was just angry. Everybody was angry at each other. Nobody was having any fun. Even if the young guys were playing and a little bit, and that was cool, but even the young guys weren't playing enough. So it was It was miserable all around. It was a different kind of low than some of these other points, but I'm gonna go with that. And that Brooklyn game, we should just say, was like, again, they were up by 27 and they lost the game in embarrassing fashion. It was not what you want.
Yeah, no, it's a decent pick. Yeah, I mean, look where we are now, man. I'm so glad that we are on the other side of all of that.
Yeah. Well, we hope so. Well, I think we're on the other side of all of that. I do like you could be like the most well put together team in the NBA, and like, you know, bad shit gets like, look at the Bucks last year, right? Bucks, like, yeah, they kind of shook things up. They made a trade for Dame, like that went pretty horribly. Like the Suns go get Kevin Durant, like, you know, then they trade for Bradley Beal, like they barely make the playoffs. So like, it's a tough league, but I feel like the bones of the franchise are in like a good, you know, place right now.
Yeah, and look, like, you know, we always talk about, like, all fans talk about how like it's so much better when you draft guys, you know, and they make it happen. But it's also really good when you sign a guy like Brunson and then he blows up. You know, you get in on it before, you know, you strike, you know, before the iron's hot. You know, that's just as satisfying. You know, so the fact where this team is right now, and you know where they were just 4 years ago, and they're still on the up. It's just an awesome time right now.
You want to go to some quick honorable mentions?
Sure.
Here, Blaine, do you have any honorables?
How about Frank Ntilikina? How about that? How about
just Frank Ntilikina?
Just Frank?
Frank Ntilikina. That's it.
Draft night 2017. Frank Ntilikina. How about?
So one of my honorable mentions, funny enough, it is a Frank one. It's not draft night because, if anything, it was Phil getting fired immediately after drafting Frank.
6 days later. Why did they even let him? Why'd they let him make the pick?
Knowing that they're like, that was the only reason they made the pick is because Phil made it. My Frank honorable mention was Christmas Day 2018, when Frank was benched against the Milwaukee Bucks with his mom in town from halfway across the world to watch her son play. And like, he had been he was not playing well or not playing much, but he had at least been in the rotation. But it was like they benched him that day, and it was like what
were the stakes of that, John? What were the stakes of that game, though?
Oh, they were nothing. Like, the team was fucking terrible.
Right, that's right.
So you're making my point. Like, they sucked. They were terrible. They were going nowhere fast, and you couldn't play this freaking kid on Christmas Day, like in front of his. Like, what did it matter?
It was definitely Frank's number one. If he was here, that would have been his number one.
That would have been his number one. Barry, you got an honorable mention?
Knicks signed Joakim Noah to a $72 million deal.
I had that on my list too. Yeah.
Was that
the moment that kept on giving year after year with that tied up money?
That
when
was
they had a Robin Lopez that they could have gotten. Yes.
July of 2016. Yeah.
Yeah. Just entering the 16-17 season.
When did we stop paying him? 2 years ago, right? The 4-year deal that signed in 16 and it took us 6 years to pay off.
That's such a great call because, like, unlike some contracts that like end up age, like Fournier, like that contract didn't age great. But like I was excited about Fournier when they signed him. Like, you know, I was excited. Like, I can't honestly think of many contracts over the course of or trades or anything where the moment the Knicks made the trade, it was like, what is happening? The two exceptions, 2.5. Because sadly, I'm gonna. People could hold this against me as much as you want. I don't care. I'll admit it. The night of the Bargnani trade, I was like, maybe he puts it together in New York. So that's the half. The two that were like instantly, it was like, this is a fucking disaster. One, Joakim Noah signing, and two, trading for Jerome James. Or signing Jerome James.
That was way before. I thought, like, when I was first trying to figure out years, I thought of that immediately. But yeah, that was way before. But that's another horrible one. Sorry,
and for me personally, trading Sprewell for Keith Van Horn, but that I don't think most people care about that. Signing Joakim was a good one. The only other two honorable mentions I had is December 3rd, 2022. The loss to Dallas at home when we all thought Tibbs was going to get fired. That's
a really good one. That's a really good one.
47-point swing in that game. The Knicks were up by 15 and they were down by as many as 32. And this one's really tricky because, like, he was already not really popular with the fan base, but it was just was ugly, and it was just ugly, was Oakley getting removed from the Garden in February 2017. It was just not. Remember why I was out like having dinner in Massapequa Park, and I saw that happening like on TV, like showing it. I'm like, what is happening? Like, could this is happening now? So, yeah,
right. And then my only other one was the Atlanta Hawks series, as a whole. It's not like the Knicks were like favored in that series. It was kind of even, if I remember right. It was almost like a pick 'em. Either team could have had it.
A lot of people picked the Knicks. Of Knicks.
But yeah, just the fact that they didn't show up that series, and the pivotal performance by Randall that whole series, and that they just went out in 5 games, that hurt more than losing to Miami, and of course losing to Indiana last year.
And we were at that elimination game, yes? Right?
Yes.
That's the one. The 3 of us were at 5. That one.
Yeah.
We could end here, but I just want to what's so funny, not funny, but since the 90s when I was a kid, the worst loss I've experienced in terms of I'm not talking about a blowout like the Dallas game I just mentioned or something like that, but in terms of just a typical devastating sports loss, right? Where you're a good team and you're in a game and you lose the game in devastating fashion. The worst loss was this past spring when Game 5 to Philly, because I was that was it. That was the second round, and they blew the chance in the second round. The way they lost that game, and I was so despondent. And yet, I didn't even think of putting that on this list because obviously they won the next game. And it's funny, if you end up winning the series, if you end up winning the championship that year, those moments cease to exist. But in the moment, they're pretty bad. But yet. Something like some of the things we're talking about, they live on because those happened in seasons where there was nobody was competing for anything, which is bad. All right, this was good. I feel like Andrew, anything you want to chime in on any devastation you've experienced over the last 8 years?
So you guys hit on all the big ones. I think the honestly the entire Kemba experience would be something that I would put up there.
Nice.
How did you feel when they first made the announcement that he was coming, though? A little excited?
That's the funny part, is that it's the combination of the Randall thumbs down game, because during that portion of the year was when that was the Omicron surge. So Kemba got taken out of the rotation, got put back in, and in the first 3 games had a 20-point game off the bench, 42 points against the Wizards in a loss, and then a triple-double on Christmas, and then Tibbs had no justification to take him out of the starting lineup again. Yeah, how are you going to bench him, a respected veteran? And every inclination that Tibbs had to bench him in the first place was, rewarded, or at least proven right over the 3-18 stretch. John hit on it. The 2022 season as a whole is kind of the low point. Anything before that is a whole different regime and a whole different, when you expect something to be awful and it's awful, you're like, oh, this is awful. When you experience the We Here season and you're like, oh, this is the start of something, then the following year it's like, oh, no, this is a fluke. Those good feelings were bad. This is awful again. That's why I think 2022 stands out. But
no, that's well said. Well, look,
oh, by the way, the actual answer to your question is when they traded Carmelo Anthony. That was a sad day in my life when Carmelo Anthony was no longer a New York Knick. Is that what that's what you wanted me to bring that up? Yeah.
I swear I was not poking the bear. That's not.
I was glad that saga was finally over. If anything, one of the high points is Phil Jackson waking up from his nap and resigning,
Resigning. Was that
mutually agreeing to part ways? Yes.
That was, man. Yeah, that wasn't a great one either.
Barry, you're part of one of my other high points. The first game that they played against Porzingis, where they beat him in Dallas, and Frank had 4 threes that night.
Yes.
And I watched that game at Barry's house on Long Island when I was still living near you. Yeah.
Wait, the first KP game?
The first KP game that they played against Porzingis was in Dallas.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there was a watch party that night.
The watch party was for the game at the Garden. That's the Marcus Morris game.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Jonathan, don't let your old brain try to battle Andrew's young brain.
No. Yeah. I'm not good at a lot of things. Remembering obscure Knicks moments is the thing I have on people. So I'll take it. But I think you guys covered everything. All the bad, and thankfully we've arrived at a lot of good.
So yeah, I was about to say, so here is hoping that I mean, yes, it will always be a hard Knicks life, but here's hoping that this season is the least hard Knicks life that there has been for in quite some time. And I could just leave it at that. Blandy, final thoughts before we get you out of here?
I'm looking forward to the season. I think we're going to have a big season this year, and I'm happy to sit down. I'm looking forward to sit down knowing night in, night out that we're going to have as good a chance to win as any team in the NBA. And, after January and watching what these guys did in January together before Randall got injured, I can't wait to see what they can do over the course of a regular season, this group.
Well said. Mr. Dworkin?
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to where this team is now, I mean, we just signed a guy this week in Marcus Morris that just 5 seasons ago was the leading scorer for our Knicks. And now he's the 12th guy the 11th or 12th guy down on the bench?
Oh, I mean, if he makes the team, he's going to be 13? Well, hold on. Let me think about this. Well, practically speaking, Dadier is going to be on the roster, so he's going to be ahead of Dadier. I think I don't know. Well, if he makes the team, KDB probably not going to be. Whatever. He's going to be on very far down the bench.
Right. Like it just shows where this team, has come. We're now they signed a guy like that just 5 years ago. But no, I mean, I'm really looking forward to this season. I mean, this was like the first off season where I wasn't like following every single thing, all the big stories, of course, but like I'm not worried this offseason because of where the Knicks are at. And seasons before, I'm always worried, like, they got to do this, they need that. Obviously, do I have concerns? Yes, I have, a couple of big concerns for this team, but it's nothing like it's been in the past.
Yeah. No, they're in a good spot, and it really does show you when you consider that, like, with our draft picks, like, we really, like, we covered a lot of ground over the course of there are other franchises that that have gone in recent memory, like 5, 6, 7, 8 seasons without having one moment, right? As bad as like one of the ones that we picked in our draft. So the fact that they had all of that stuff happen to them and that they are here now is a testament to Leon Rose, testament to Tom Thibodeau, and obviously it's a testament to Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle and some of the other guys they brought in. All right. Everybody go subscribe, right? To Hard Knicks Life podcast.
Yeah. And I can make the announcement. Season premiere Thursday, September 26th. And there will be a show dropping every Thursday thereafter.
Well, listen, if you ever need a third to, if you're jonesing for that three person dynamic again, you know where to find me.
Yeah, you've got so much time on your hands.
What?
Let me find the hour in your calendar that you're not recording or writing a newsletter. I'm sure you'd love to hop on.
You know what I've been doing a lot? Actually, the past week, really, I've been playing a lot of Super Mario World 3D on the Switch with my older daughter. It's the first video game. We honestly haven't had a lot of video games. She just got the Switch for Christmas. But it's like we've like really connected playing this very stupid game. So I have allowed myself to play some video games for the first time since college. It's a lot of fun, I gotta say.
So what I heard is that you do have time to go on their podcast.
Absolutely, I always will have time for that.
All right, we could take away from this video game thing, and he can go on a podcast with you guys.
There you go.
Barry, Blandy, thank you guys for coming on. Everybody out there, listen, if you're not subscribed, of course, to Hard Knicks Life, do so. There, I mean it when there is no other podcast out there like it, and it's impossible not to enjoy it if you're a Knicks fan. If you're not a Knicks fan, like my wife, I've told you this before, my wife loves listening to you guys. So go subscribe to them. Of course, if you like this podcast, feel free to tell people about us as well. And we will be back. We got some good episodes coming up this week. I'll just leave it at that. Had something we were excited about last week, got pushed to this week. We're hoping it comes through. But until then, everybody enjoy your week and take care.